that alfalfa pellets help there. What we do know for sure, alfalfa pellets feed your worms. Alfalfa pellets break down slowly into nitrogen. So it's a slow release form of nitrogen, so it can't hurt. And it might definitely say it again, Baldo?
Tricontinol.
Tricontinol may actually help with the new big basal canes that we want to grow.
All right.
So I do use alfalfa here.
I'd like to welcome those who are watching our program on feeding roses on YouTube Live. We will be having another YouTube Live session next month, and it'll be a Q&A session with regards to roses. I'd like to turn this over right now to Linda Knowles, who will present our program tonight, and I'm going to go mute everybody.
Okay, so welcome to our program.
Unmute.
Gary, unmute Linda.
She's going to have to do it.
Linda, you need to unmute yourself.
Linda? Oh, she does. Please unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Gary muted everyone. So you can start all over.
Okay, I'm on my daughter's computer and I didn't know it was on mute, so sorry.
No, Gary did that to everybody. And to talk, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, okay. So welcome to our program on feeding your hungry roses. And they are very hungry right now as they are waking up out of dormancy, which doesn't last long in Northern California. We can hardly tell they're dormant at all. We just make it happen by pruning them. So now that they're waking up from being pruned and getting all their new leaves, they look gorgeous, but they're sucking out the nutrients that they can find in your soil. So if you didn't put any in, they're having a tough time. So this is all about how to feed the soil in order to feed your roses. So thank you, Kay. That was wonderful. We also have Charlotte and Baldo. So we'd like to hear from you guys. Charlotte, how about you going next?
Yeah, it was interesting this afternoon because Kay and I talked about our different approaches, and we've tailored it to our soils. She has clay soil, which has a lot of micronutrients and has and her roses are huge and big. Where I have sandy loam and decomposed granite, it isn't as nutrient rich. So I have to fertilize a lot more and more often than she does because the water just goes through my soil and the nutrients disappear through my soil. So our approaches are very different, and it was just interesting. Didn't you think so, Kay? You got to unmute yourself.
Yes, it was fun.
It was fun. It was interesting. I'm the type, I'll go to a store and I look, I'll buy different kinds of things, but because I use a lot of fertilizer with my plants, I buy whatever is the cheapest, or sometimes I'll mix things up because I'm looking to, I just want to get the food out there periodically. I will fertilize right after I prune, then again in a month or 2 or 6 weeks afterwards, etc. So that's kind of what I do. And I like to, just before a rainstorm, I like to put it down, let Mother Nature kind of work all the organic fertilizer is is basically different organic materials that are fairly nutrient dense, and they get the soil microbes, which are fungi and bacteria. They break that down by those microbes, and there's a symbiotic relationship that happens. When the plant, our roses or any other plant, they their roots, they will exude kind of sugars, and the mycorrhizae will come, oh, this is tasty. They actually kind of lay side by side, and they transfer the microbes, transfer all the little nitrogen, the different minerals and stuff to the plant, and the plant, which uses the chlorophyll to make sugars, will give the sugars to the microbes. So there's this big gigantic sort of thing going on, and I just started reading another book on roots, and my eyes are getting big because there's a lot of things are going on in the ground. So it's just kind of interesting to see what's going on. So anyway, I also, and one of the things that works good for me because of my type of soil, I get seaweed, because it has a lot of the micronutrients. And I usually get, Peaceful Valley Garden has it for a pound, I think, for $22. And I get that, and I use that through the whole growing season. And not very much. You can dilute it in water and give it as a foliar feed. When I'm putting my organic fertilizer down, sometimes I mix it in and it just gets spread around, and then Mother Nature waters it in for me. So that's kind of what I do. So, and I always give my plants a break in the summer too, because when it's really hot, they don't want to produce that many flowers. And then I'll do one maybe, or two maybe fertilizer treatments before a rose show, let's say. But hopefully I'll be able to do that this year. So that's kind of what I do.
Let me ask for questions on anything that Charlotte just shared. If she said something you don't know what she said, or you don't understand it, or you want to hear more, ask away. Unmute yourself like I didn't at the start before you ask your question so we can hear it. I don't see any hands up. No questions. You got it all? You're good? Your roses are fertilized. You're going to run out and do it tomorrow? Okay. Baldo, let's hear from you.
Unmute yourself, Baldo.
Thank you.
My approach is very easy. It's very similar. I have similar soils to Charlotte, which is sandy loam, but it's more sandy than loam. So one of the things that I have to do because of the sandy soil is I have to put a lot of organics in the soil. And luckily I get a lot of horse manure from my neighbors. So I put about anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of horse manure in all the beds, as much as I can. Okay, I haven't done it right now because I'm still working in the potted garden. Anyway, that's my approach: is put a lot of organic material in the rose beds. Now, horse manure is, I think of it as liquefied what do you call it? It's alfalfa that's already been through the horse. So it's already been processed by the horse. So, a lot of people use alfalfa tea. Well, I cut all those steps, and I put the horse manure in there, and I don't have to. Whenever I water my roses, I get some manure tea, which is processed alfalfa. Anyway, so that's what I do now. Last year I noticed a little bit of discoloration on some of the foliage, and I figured that it was probably due to iron deficiency. So on Monday I went to to Ready Grow, and I bought some fertilizer that was that had some chelated iron, and I'm going to use some of that in addition to the horse manure to bring the color on the roses.
You know, that's funny you say that. I had some, I've never had that before in my roses, but I had some roses that had iron deficiency also. And the pH was a little bit different around those particular plants. They may be roses about 2 or 3 feet away were fine, but they apparently were more sensitive. And I know Kay mentioned she had some a package of pleated iron also. You know, because iron is dependent on your pH in your soil too, and how readily the plants can pull it up.
Yeah, you need a little bit of acidic soil in order for iron to work.
Okay, look
Yeah,
what
there it is.
we
I
have.
got one of those too.
So there's the chelated iron.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's what I'm doing is I'm adding to the horse manure. I'm adding some extra fertilizer that I bought at Ready Grow. That's high on chelated iron.
If you have an iron deficiency, correct me if I'm wrong, the leaf is yellow, but the veins are greenish. And usually you see it
green.
at the,
Yeah,
pardon me?
And do
very
you
green.
do you apply it as a foliar feeding, like from a hose in sprayer?
Well,
or pump sprayer?
you can do it. You don't want to do it as a foliar feed. You don't want to do the chelate as a foliar because oftentimes the shock of that kind of burns the foliage a little bit. So I would try to do it as a drench.
Except that Green Acres has a pre-mixed foliar feed that you can attach directly to your hose, attached container.
Yeah, in the past I have used a regular 20-20-20 fertilizer that had some iron, and that also fixed the problem. And I used to use it as in a hose and sprayer. So I still have some of that, so I might do it.
Okay.
What I found I had the one particular plant that really looked the worst. I moved it, and I moved it in an area with that I had amended with a lot of organic material, and it looks fine this year. Didn't look very good at all last year. So it's putting out lots of new growth. It's putting out new canes from the base. So it's a miniature. So it looks great. One of the other things to say, like Baldo says, he uses the horse manure. That's one thing. Last year I put compost down. Again, I'm going to be putting compost or horse manure down too. I'm trying to decide how many yards I need to get.
And Baldo, that horse manure is your mulch, is it not?
Correct.
So two purposes in one.
Correct. I might apply a second dose probably in August or September. Generally before, when I get ready for a rose show, that's when I make sure that the horse manure is in good levels in the rose beds.
And you would put that down at least 6 weeks beforehand so it can work.
I usually put organics about 2 months before.
Yeah.
Because they take time to kind of be available to the roots of the plants.
Yeah, organics have to be broken down before the plant can use them.
let's
I
allow some
also bought,
questions. You guys have said a lot. Let's ask folks if they understand about the iron and the horse manure or whatever. Any questions? Vanessa. Unmute. I guess Vanessa doesn't.
Well, no, I had to move to get all the way up to the computer.
Okay.
I sit way back there. The computer's way up there.
Oh, okay.
So Baldo, how fresh is your horse manure when you put it down, or has it sat for quite a while? Because when I used to use it as compost for my garden, it had aged when I was in Wyoming, they would age it quite a few years before it got put down in the garden. Or is it horse manure that's only a year old?
the horse manure is 3 weeks old.
Is how,
Okay, so
how much?
It's probably about 3 weeks old.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
That whole
Horse
thing,
manure.
yeah,
Horse manure, contrary to what everybody says, will not burn
Right.
your roses.
right.
The plants around the, where you put it.
Right.
It's very easy on the plants. Now, if you were going to put chicken manure or cow manure, then that's a different story. Horse manure is very safe on roses. It also doesn't stink. Whereas if you put alfalfa meal and you water in, you have to kind of put a pin over your nose because it stinks. High heaven, the alfalfa when it starts composting.
Mhm.
So, like I said, I like horse manure instead of the alfalfa meal because it's two things in one.
okay. See,
Yeah, and I
We
agree
have,
with
this is
that.
Kay. We have a
spent 10 years
horse.
in Wyoming where the equestrian center and everywhere else, they had the horse manure piles set up by years, and it was free for the taking, but you didn't touch the piles until they were at least 3 or 4 years old. And that was what everybody was taught to do. And
Well,
so
Yeah, the
that was-
master gardeners, the Sacramento master gardeners have a pet peeve about horse manure. Everything, it has to compost for at least 6 months before they recommend it. And when I was on the radio with Fred Hoffman, whenever I mentioned horse manure, he always had to say something, that it had to be aged. And, I always used it oftentimes hot off the horse.
Well, this is Kay, and I know we have a horse, and we feed our horse grass hay because alfalfa is too hot for this older horse. Grass hay is known to be full of the seeds, a lot of seeds left over that don't get digested in the horse. And so I like, when we use our horse manure, I like it to sit out in the field for a year and get all the weeds that grow, all of the straw and all the grass seed and whatever weeds may be in there. My husband will rototill it with the tractor, and then I know that the end of that first spring, I can start to use it because all of the weed seeds have sprouted. And I'd rather have them sprout down there in the compost area than in my rose garden. And that's really the only reason for aging.
If you use horse manure, you have to use a pre-emergence.
Right.
And I've been using for the last year. I've been using Barricade. Or you can use Preen, but Preen only lasts you a couple months. But barricade will last you a lot longer.
So both of you guys raised a good point, especially Kay about the weeds. It kind of depends on the diet of the horse as to whether you're going to get a lot of weeds, no weeds, a few weeds, whatever. But Baldo and I both have experienced over a period of years of using horse manure when it's a couple of weeks old, and it's fine. Rosarians for a number of years, and I don't know where they got this or if it's another area of the country, always have talked about it being too hot and would burn the roses. In our experience, that doesn't happen. It's fine.
You know, I think that they equated horse manure with steer manure. And steer manure, as I understand it, will burn.
There you
Yes.
go.
Especially chicken manure.
Chicken is the worst.
Yeah.
Chicken has the most nitrogen, you know, and it will burn the most.
But even
I-
cow manure is a little different than horse manure. And it's a lot what we call hotter.
It is hotter. My dad used to go get steer manure or cow manure fresh from the dairy. And we used to spread it, and we did it in the fall. The rain would come, and then it would be fine for our vegetable garden the next year. So it's timing, because sometimes he'd go and he'd get aged manure, and sometimes it would be the patties were still hot. So I got to shovel a lot of that stuff, but you're right. You have to be a little bit more careful, but chicken is the absolute worst.
I have a question
Who
about
has questions? Dolores.
the horse manure, and maybe this is the source I got it from, Carol or whatever, the lady who said it was compost. So it was aged horse manure, and there were, what is it, sawdust shavings or wood shavings also in there. And so that ended up being really good for my newly planted sucky clay soil. However, the issue I have a small lot, and the wind would blow the wood shavings, sawdust stuff into my pool, which made me crazy.
Oh.
So I don't know, is that like Baldo, the horse manure you get, does it also have the, I mean, I love the wood shavings part of it because it was so good for the soil, but the issue I had was the wind blowing it. So I'm just wondering what other people's experience has been.
Wood shavings, because we raised sheep for several years, and wood shavings is what we used for bedding. So I had a lot of it. You'd let that age for 1 to 2 or 3 years, because wood shavings break down slow. They have resins and oils in them that seep into the soil that you really don't want around your roses. And as the wood shavings break down, they use nitrogen. So they actually pull the nitrogen from the roses. So your wood shavings, you would need to break down. So horse manure mixed with wood shavings, you would want that to be aged, I would think.
So the horse manure that you are getting does not have wood shavings in it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not sure what my source uses, but every once in a while I notice that it has some of the bedding, and I don't mind
Right.
integrating that into my garden.
Mhm.
Most
But
people
I don't
use
have-
straw for
You
bedding.
don't have a pool nearby, and neither do I. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
don't have a pool either.
So Dolores, probably wetting it down and then covering it with an top dressing of another compost to keep the wood shavings from blowing around would help.
Yeah, another layer of compost.
Yeah. And wetting it
No,
down.
you might want to integrate into the soil a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of work them into the soil.
Okay. Okay.
So
All right. Thank you.
how about some of you sharing what your favorite fertilizers are, what you've done up to this point, and where you are in fertilizing your roses? Dwayne and Melody, you guys are accomplished rose growers. how about sharing with us your tips?
Unmute yourselves.
Wake up, Melody.
No, I'm tired.
We use a lot of horse manure also. Our big battle with the horse manure is the weeds. And as far as aging it, I don't know if you're gonna, unless you're doing it yourself and have a way to age it. The places where you get the stuff from, they don't want to sit it around for 2 or 3 years waiting for it to compost. They want to get rid of it today. So
Yeah,
usually
that
what
we-
we
yeah,
get, they say it's aged, yes, for at least a half an hour.
No, yeah, we use, it's usually
Well-
a couple, 3 months by the time we get it.
Yeah, except the stuff you're getting is on top of the pile.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
So,
But we use
oh, we use alfalfa
we use
product.
triple 20. We
Yeah.
use fish emulsion. Also, I like fish emulsion really well. That's one of my favorites, especially for potted stuff.
But you have to be very careful.
And you
After
do
we
that.
put it down, we hose everything down again.
Do you feed the fish emulsion with as a foliar feeding?
Yeah.
No, well,
No,
it,
yes
it,
and no,
it gets sprayed on the plants, but I don't look forward to the oil residue left on the plants, because that's what burns your plants, I think, more than anything. So I usually wash it off. I'm not convinced that the plants take up that much food from the foliage. I think they get that from the roots.
Okay, good to
Yeah,
know.
when I tell people to use fish emulsion, I tell them to use it as a drench, not on the foliage,
Yeah. it burns-
because it will burn the foliage, especially in the summer.
Well, we
And
don't
I
do
agree
much.
with Dwayne that the foliage doesn't do much for absorbing the fish emulsion.
So you're saying drench the soil around it.
right.
Correct.
Okay. Debbie, what do you use to feed your roses? Unmute.
There we go. I use, it kind of depends on which area that my roses are planted in. I have one bed that I didn't know belonged to my property. I thought it was my neighbor's because it's right in front of her front door, but it's actually mine. And that bed has not been amended for 20 years like all my other beds have been. So that bed needs more iron. It's extremely alkaline, and my water is very alkaline as well. So it creates some problems. But mostly I use either Dr. Earth's organic rose or the other organic rose fertilizer that you guys were showing. So I use those. I also use compost, a good 2 inches of compost, at least around my roses. I found a new compost that I like a lot that it's gorgeous stuff. It actually comes from Maine, and it's got composted seaweed, and no, it doesn't have a lot of salt in it or anything. People are, oh, too much salt. No. But it's really, really good. I find a lot of worms in there. So I will, if I noticed a couple years ago that my worms were going down, so I've thrown down some worm castings to increase some of the worms in some of the beds. Because some have good worms, some have I don't see any worms. So I added some castings on there. Last year I added some bat guano, but I'm not adding that this year. So I'm just basically doing the fertilizer and compost, really good compost, 12 inches. And then I add a good couple inches of mulch on top of that. And
Wow.
the
Good for
water
you, Debbie.
in, it keeps the heat from frying everything more than it would otherwise. And And that's pretty much what I use. Okay. Occasionally I'll try something new. There was one year I tried neem seed meal. Oh, that stuff stinks. It's horrible. I couldn't get that smell out of my nose for days. I've never used it since. So it was awful. And I didn't see any difference in any of the things. I tried some Milorganite. Is that how you pronounce it? I tried some of that, which is sewage sludge. I'm not sure it ever did anything. So really I stick with the basics, and I only fertilize maybe twice a year, 3 times if I'm lucky to have the time. So.
Thank
Debbie,
you.
what do you
That's
use?
excellent.
What do you use as your mulch?
I actually like, believe it or not, pathway mulch. It breaks down really
I
well.
love that.
What?
I love that.
Tiny. And I really like it. It's really has allowed, my soil was practically all caliche when I first moved in. And I'd take a shovel and I'd, pound the shovel and it would go in about that much. I'll show you the camera, about that much. And now I get the whole shovel in, the whole blade in. And I'm the only one in my entire complex that I can actually dig in their soil. So that's what 20 years of organic, taking care of, compost, fertilizer, etc., really has done to really improve my soil.
Wow, kudos, Debbie.
Thank you.
And you're part of the master gardeners. What do you use for your roses? What do you do?
Are you talking about, I basically, I don't, if you're asking about spraying, are you talking about that?
Huh? And you need to unmute in order to share with us. There you go.
Are you talking about Ann Beinhorn?
I am.
There's always another Ann here. Yeah, I was told
There's
it
an
has to be.
Ann. I don't see another Ann. So Ann Beinhorn.
I was told about the age manure too in our classes, that it's better to age 6 months. I haven't used manure myself. After I prune, I always add compost. And I really like, if you're going to do a packaged solution, it can be Rose Grow that they sell over at Green Acres. So you have to spend a little money. I don't have a lot of roses, and I really like Rose Grow. I put that as an added top dressing every time I prune in the winter. And I also use that for many of my other plantings. And I have noticed with the organic liquid fertilizers, they age and get very dense after a period of time. So they have to be properly diluted, but you also can't let them sit, especially getting too warm and diluting, getting too condensed.
And which organic liquid fertilizer are you talking about?
It's available at Green Acres. I think it was at Fox Farm. Don't remember what the brand was.
I don't know. This is the one I use.
Mm-hmm. Oh, D, yeah, G&D is good.
Yeah, this is one, but it is thick.
There's a Dr. Earth, and I use that a lot too.
Okay. All right. Jan, how about you? Gotta unmute. Gotta find your little microphone icon and click it. There you go.
That okay?
I can hear you now.
Good. Okay, I'm here to learn about fertilizing because I have done nothing this year yet.
That's okay.
Last year, I did probably everything. Everybody would say it's a no-no, but I used Osmocote. I get down on my knees and pull away the compost and go and put it in little holes and work it into the soil.
Yeah.
And cover it up again with mulch, and of course then water it in good. Yeah, Osmocote Plus.
Kay
And
is showing Osmocote. That's fine. And you don't even need to
Yeah.
work so hard, just put it around.
right, and it's for 6 months. I used it once in last year. I used it once after I was done pruning, or as soon as I could get to it. And then, 6 months later, and that's it.
Okay. So what have you learned tonight, Jan, that you might try?
I might try something organic here, whatever. But I know I've purchased.
You don't have to really dig it in. You can just pour it around. Just spread it around and leave it and let it go.
Okay.
It's easier than trying to work it in.
Well, I was trying to follow the directions.
Yeah, I know. But in California, we're kind of different from some of the other states, especially in the East or the Midwest. And we have a
How about 8 o'clock?
yeah. Gary, which of the tips and tricks that you've heard tonight do you incorporate?
It's a mix. Sometimes we use a pellet type of fertilizers. Sometimes we'll use a liquid. What I'd like to eventually do is run an extension from my koi pool part of biofilters and run them to the flowers. So
That
they'll
would be
get
great.
real fish emulsions.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's the goal. And I'm having some modifications made to the filtration system later on this month. So that'll probably happen then, hopefully.
That would be fabulous. Yeah.
Well,
So
fish emulsions are the
anybody else?
best.
Anybody else, anything you've learned tonight that you might do extra or add to your program?
Yeah, I have a few things to add to my program. Jan mentioned Osmocote. And when I first joined the Rose Society, that was the recommended thing to do. Some of the old timers would use make 4 holes around the roses, and then put fill the holes with Osmocote. And anyway, that's what everybody would do. Anyway, I tried it and I didn't care for it. So the only time I use the time release fertilizers is for potted roses. But if you only have a few roses, that's great. But if you have a lot of roses like me, it can be very expensive. So, but I use on Monday I went to Ready Grow and I bought some time release. It's an Apex product, and anyway, I'm working with my potted roses right now, and I'm putting some of the Apex on the potted roses because I don't have to. One application and that's it. Anyway, so if you have a lot of potted roses, you might consider using time release like Osmocote or an Apex product.
Okay. Charlotte, anything to add?
Not really. This is just a fun time of the year and everything's just popping. Just you as long as you fertilize this time of year and get it down, the roses are going to be beautiful. That's really about it.
I'll appreciate it.
Everything's looking good.
Vanessa and Rick, what have you learned tonight? What have you already been doing? Somebody has to unmute. It's going to be Vanessa.
What I've learned tonight is I better get out there soon and give it the second dose of fertilizer.
That's it.
He can go find somebody with some horses. Oh, you can go visit Kay.
I go to a barn. I go to a barn about 3 miles away,
Yeah,
and I have plastic buckets in the car, and the barn is free, and you drive around to the gate. You have to open the gate and then close it after you, and drive around to the piles of manure, and I shovel it in my plastic buckets, put them in the car, and come on back. So it's free. It's not that hard. And there you are.
But we used to, like I said, in Wyoming, the equestrian centers would fill up the outside of the barns. They would, out in the fields, they would have the piles, and they would be marked with which one was the recently aged and ready to go. And you just went out with your shovels and pitchfork. You filled up the back of a pickup truck for free and went home. You just borrowed a pickup truck if you didn't have one of your own, which most of us did living in Wyoming, and went home and put it in your garden. Why pay for it at the nursery?
Yeah.
It was like, waste of money to pay for it at the nursery. But you never took it from the most recent pile.
Well, now you can.
I know. But we were always taught you always took it from something that was at least 3 or 4 years.
And we were taught that as well. But experience has changed our minds.
Yeah. That's
Kay,
why I asked the question.
Add. Kay, anything else?
I just want to make sure that everyone heard the answer to the question on alfalfa pellets. To make sure that you buy rabbit pellets made only from alfalfa. Don't buy the horse feed alfalfa pellets, since those contain other ingredients like grain. Horses like the grain, but roses like horse manure, but not the pure horse food before it has been processed through the horse. And again, we use just alfalfa pellets on the roses that I want to give me more basal breaks. On the grafted roses that are getting older, that are kind of being stingy, and the new growth that I want new growth. On a lot of my own root roses, I got plenty of new growth coming. I don't need to stimulate them with alfalfa.
Good point. Well, thank you very much, our panel. I hope everybody enjoyed that. We've got some good programs coming up. In May, we're going to have Suzanne Horn, a very gifted exhibitor in Southern California. And she's going to be speaking to us on exhibiting minis and mini floras. She's a dynamic speaker. It will be on Zoom. She lives in Southern California, and she's going to present from there. You won't want to miss that. That's May.
All right. Well, thank you all who are on YouTube Live watching this. Come again, April 1st. We will do another YouTube Live program. It'll be Rose Care, and we'll have a panel of master consulting rosarians doing the presentation. So we'll see you then. And I'll end this.